I never thought I would hear the words, "You're a burden," come out of the mouth of the child I spent 24 years sacrificing everything for. But there I was, standing on my own porch with 2 suitcases and a trash bag full of my belongings while my daughter, Chloe, looked at me with nothing but cold indifference. She told me that having me in the house was stifling her marriage and that my presence was a weight they could no longer carry. Even though I was the one paying half the mortgage and doing all the childcare for my 2-year-old grandson. It was the ultimate betrayal, delivered with a smirk by her husband, Mark, who stood behind her like he'd finally won a long-fought war. I was heartbroken, homeless, and discarded like yesterday's garbage, but they forgot one very important detail. The family trip of a lifetime, to Italy that we were supposed to leave for in 3 days was entirely in my name, and paid for with my retirement savings. Tell me, would you have just walked away and let them enjoy a $20,000 vacation on your dime after they kicked you to the curb? Or would you have made sure they felt the weight of their own cruelty? I need you to listen to how this started because I still can't believe how someone can turn so toxic so fast. My husband passed away 5 years ago, leaving me with a decent life insurance policy and a house that was too big for one person. Chloe and Mark were struggling at the time, living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment and drowning in Mark's credit card debt. Chloe approached me with tears in her eyes, begging me to sell my place so we could buy a larger house together. She promised that I would have my own suite, that we would be a family unit, and that I would never have to worry about being alone in my old age. Against the advice of my lawyer, I did it. I sold my forever home and put every cent of the equity into a massive 5-bedroom house in a high-end suburb. The deal was simple. I paid a massive down payment that covered 60% of the house's value, and they would handle the utilities while we split the monthly mortgage payments. For the first 2 years, it was a dream. When my grandson Leo was born, I stepped up as the full-time nanny so Chloe could go back to her corporate job. I cooked the meals, I scrubbed the floors, and I kept that house running while they built their careers. I remember those early mornings, waking up at 5 a.m. to quiet a crying infant so Chloe could get enough sleep for her big presentations. I didn't mind the exhaustion because I believed I was building a legacy of love. I would spend hours researching the best organic purees and educational toys, making sure Leo had everything he needed to thrive. Mark would come home from work and barely acknowledge me, heading straight to the gym or the Xbox, but I excused it as work stress. I poured my heart into that garden too, planting roses and hydrangea that bloomed beautifully every spring, making the house the envy of the neighborhood. But slowly the dynamic shifted. Mark got a promotion and suddenly started acting like he was the king of the castle. He began making snide remarks about how crowded the living room felt when I was watching TV, or how he wished he could have a private dinner with his wife without me being there. It started small, comments about the smell of my cooking or the way I folded the laundry. He'd walk past me in the hallway and sigh loudly as if my very existence was an obstacle he had to navigate. Chloe, instead of defending me, started nodding along. She began treating me less like a mother, and more like a live-in servant who happened to pay the bills. She would leave lists of chores on the kitchen island, things like deep clean the guest bathroom, or organize Mark's closet, without even a please or thank you. I felt my soul eroding bit by bit. The tension reached a breaking point last month when I overheard them talking in the kitchen. I was coming up from the basement with a basket of their clothes when I heard Mark's voice, sharp and venomous. He was telling Chloe that they didn't need my financial help anymore because his new salary was enough, and that my nagging about Leo's nap schedule was driving him crazy. He literally said, "We're basically living with a roommate we can't fire. Think about what we could do with her suite. I could finally have that home cinema I wanted, or we could turn it into a dedicated playroom that actually looks modern." Chloe didn't even argue. She just said, "I know, Mark. It's getting to be too much. I feel like I'm constantly being watched in my own home." I sat on the basement stairs and cried silently, clutching their warm towels to my chest. I was devastated, but I tried to stay quiet to keep the peace. I told myself maybe they were just having a bad day. Then came the plan for the Italy trip. It was supposed to be my 60th birthday celebration. I had spent months planning it, the private tours of the Vatican, the villa in Tuscany with its own vineyard, the first-class flights with the lie-flat seats. I paid for everything up front, totaling over $20,000, because I wanted my family to have memories that would last forever. I even bought Chloe a designer leather bag to use as a carry-on, and got Mark a high-end camera, so he could document the trip. I was so excited to see Leo running through the Italian plazas. But 3 days ago, everything exploded. I had asked Mark to please not leave his muddy boots on the white rug I had just deep cleaned, and he lost it. He started screaming that I didn't own him, and that he was tired of living under my thumb. He called me a control freak, and said that every time I helped with the house, it was just a way to hold power over them. Chloe walked in, and instead of calming him down, she looked at me with eyes that were colder than I'd ever seen. She said, "Mom, he's right. You're a burden to our marriage. You've made this house feel like a prison. We want you out by the weekend. We've already looked at the paperwork, and since we pay the utilities and part of the mortgage, we have rights. We're done." I asked her where I was supposed to go, and she just shrugged and said I had plenty of money and could find an apartment. Mark added, "And don't worry, we'll still take care of the house. And the Italy trip will be a good way for us to decompress from all the stress you've caused. Consider it a parting gift for all the trouble we've put up with." They actually expected me to leave the house I paid for, and then let them fly across the world on my credit card. They had already started moving my things into the garage. They didn't even give me a full week. They wanted me gone before the flight so they could come back to a clean, mother-free home. So, that's where things stood. I was standing in the driveway of a house I technically owned a majority of, being told I was a burden, while they had their bags packed for a luxury vacation I funded. I saw them through the window, clinking wine glasses, celebrating their new beginning, while I loaded my life into a sedan. Before I tell you exactly how I handled the cancellations and the look on their faces at the airport, I want you to pause right now. Go to the comments and tell me, am I the jerk for wanting to ruin their vacation? Or should I have been the bigger person and let them go? I really want to know what you would do if your own child kicked you out. After I spent the first night in a hotel crying myself to sleep, staring at the sterile beige walls and wondering where I went wrong as a parent, the sadness turned into a cold, hard clarity. I realized that as long as I kept being nice, they would keep stepping on me. They weren't just taking my money, they were taking my dignity. The next morning, I sat at the small hotel desk with my laptop and a large coffee. I called my travel agent. Since the entire trip was booked in my name and paid for via my accounts, I had full control. I didn't just cancel the flights. I called the villa owner in Tuscany directly. I explained the situation briefly, that the party had changed, and he was surprisingly sympathetic. I canceled the private chef we had hired for the birthday dinner, the vineyard tours, and the museum passes. Because I had purchased high-end travel insurance, I was able to get about 80% of my money back as a refund to my original card, and the rest stayed as a credit for my future use. I felt a strange sense of peace as each confirmation email hit my inbox. Reservation canceled. Refund processed. Booking void. But I didn't stop there. I called my lawyer, the one who told me not to sell my house 5 years ago. He was more than ready to help. I started the process of a partition sale on the house immediately. Since I was on the deed and had provided the bulk of the down payment, which was documented in the closing papers, I was going to force them to either buy me out at current market value, which I knew they couldn't afford, or sell the house and split the proceeds according to our initial investment percentages. My lawyer told me that since they had essentially constructively evicted me from a property I held majority interest in, we had a very strong case to fast-track the sale. I didn't tell Chloe or Mark a single word. I let them spend the next 2 days bragging on social media. Chloe posted a photo of her new luggage with the caption, "Rome is calling. Finally getting the break we deserve. #family vaki, #blessed, #fresh starts." Mark posted a picture of his passport and a glass of scotch. I watched it all from a distance, feeling a mixture of pity and resolve. The morning of the flight, Chloe sent me a text saying, "We're heading to the airport. Hope you're enjoying your new freedom. Don't call us while we're in Rome. We need space from your negativity. We'll talk about the house when we get back, but expect things to change." I didn't reply. I just sat in my hotel room with a cup of coffee and waited. I knew they were checking in at the international terminal around 10 a.m. About 3 hours later, my phone started exploding. Chloe called me 12 times in a row. Then Mark started calling. Then came the texts ranging from "Why isn't the booking showing up?" to "Pick up the phone right now, you old hag." When I finally picked up, Chloe was screaming so loud the people in the hotel hallway could probably hear her. They were at the check-in counter, and the agent had told them their tickets had been voided 48 hours ago. They had tried to check into the flight only to be told the entire reservation was gone. They had even tried to call the villa, thinking it was a technical glitch, only to find out the booking was dead. Mark took the phone and started threatening me, saying I was unstable and vindictive, and that they were stranded at the airport with a toddler and no vacation. He said, "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? People are looking at us. We have 4 suitcases and a baby, and we have nowhere to go." I very calmly told him, "Well, since I'm such a burden, I figured I'd lighten your load by removing the stress of a $20,000 trip. Since you don't want me in your house, you certainly don't want me in your pockets. You said you didn't need my financial help anymore, remember? I'm just helping you prove it." Chloe got back on the line, crying now, high-pitched and hysterical, saying that Leo was looking forward to the trip, and how could I do this to my grandson? She tried to play the bad grandmother card, claiming I was traumatizing the child. I told her that Leo is 2 and won't remember a thing, but she will certainly remember the day she realized her mother isn't a doormat. I told her, "I hope the Uber ride home is comfortable, Chloe, because when you get there, you'll find a certified letter from my attorney on the doorstep. The house is being forced into a sale. You have 30 days to find a way to pay me my 60%, or the locks will be changed by a court-ordered receiver." I hung up and blocked them both. The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I had heard in years. The aftermath was messy and loud. They had to take an expensive Uber back to a house that was no longer their sanctuary. Without my half of the mortgage and the free, 24-hour childcare I provided, they realized within a week that they couldn't afford their lifestyle. Mark's big salary was decent, but it wasn't luxury suburb with a nanny and a massive mortgage decent. They tried to send my sister and my late husband's brother to guilt-trip me. My sister called me saying, "How could you leave them homeless?" I told her, I didn't. They kicked me out of a house I paid for. I'm just taking back what's mine. If you're so worried, they can move into your guest room. She quieted down pretty quickly after that. Eventually, the house was sold. The market had boomed, and since I owned 60%, I walked away with my initial investment plus a significant profit. I used that money to buy a beautiful, modern condo in the city with a 24-hour doorman and a view of the water. Chloe and Mark had to downsize to a small, 2-bedroom apartment in a much worse neighborhood, closer to Mark's work but far from the life they thought they had earned. Chloe had to quit her job because the cost of childcare for Leo was more than she was bringing in after taxes. They are now living the private life they wanted so badly, but without the luxury they expected me to provide. We haven't spoken in 6 months. It's a quiet life now, and while it hurts to not see my grandson, I've learned that respect is a prerequisite for a relationship. I've spent my life being a mother and a grandmother, but I forgot how to be a person who matters to herself. I'm currently planning a solo trip to Japan for the cherry blossom season. First class 5-star hotels, the works. This time, there are no burdens coming with me, and no one to tell me where to put my boots. It's funny how people only realize your value when you stop providing the things they took for granted. They thought I was the weight holding them down, but they didn't realize I was the foundation keeping them up. When the foundation leaves, the house falls. I lost a daughter in a way, but I found my self-respect, and to me, that's worth more than any vacation or any house. Like this video if you think I did the right thing by canceling the trip and forcing the house sale. Subscribe for more stories where people finally get the karma they deserve. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Was I too harsh, or did they get exactly what was coming to them? I'll see you all in the next story.